Okay. So good afternoon, good evening, good morning. We are beginning the Right to the Sustainable City Global Hangout. This is part of the Co-Creating the City workshop we have been doing during 3 days in Bogota, and we will continue with kind of 3 more hangouts with global guests of many places of the planet. Today we have 4 cities invited, and we have 2 more guests coming. We have Habib from Beirut, from Lebanon. Hello, Habib.
Hi, how are you?
How are you? We have Mikel and other people that are joining from the Red de Espacios, the network of spaces, citizen spaces of Madrid. How are you, Mikel? Just put your microphone on.
Hello, how are you?
Okay, perfect.
I'm from the Red de Espacios Ciudadanos, the citizens.
Red de Espacios Ciudadanos. And we had a little problem with Kostas Latofis from Athens. We are speaking with him through Skype. So he's part of Neo Guinea, a kind of collective working with resilience and a lot of interesting stuff. Hello, Kostas.
Hello there. Hello.
Okay, perfect. So we'll do it this way. And well, we had Begun from the Gezi Park movement and a lot of movements from Istanbul. I think she is having a small problem at this moment. And we have Claudia from Hortelões Urbanos, a kind of citizen network of permaculture in the most important city of Brazil. So maybe we can begin with, well, Habib now is not in the window. So, well, the idea is to present your practices, because the departure point of our conversation and hangout and path was a kind of, we have to focus on citizen practices. There are a lot of things happening in civil society. And right to the city, right to the democratic city, right to the sustainable city is more these practices of people doing things than academic stuff, thinking what is the right to the city. So maybe we can speak, we can begin with Mikel and Red de Espacios Ciudadanos from Madrid, an initiative that joins somehow a lot of things that are happening in Madrid, Spanish capital, around self-organization, occupation, sustainability. So it would be nice to have this first presentation, Mikel.
Okay, how long do you give me?
Kind of 7 minutes to 10 minutes, and after that we begin a kind of conversation. So 7 minutes each of you, and it's better to do a kind of 5-7, because if not, maybe it's more difficult. So let's try to do a kind of this presentation.
So I belong to a social center, so it's quite a social center called Patio Maravillas, who has been part of the city, has been existing for over 8 years, around 9 years. And around over a year and a half ago, we started having the position of our particular center as a social center, as many other entities within the city, was to claim a right to develop these kind of projects in the city. So we appeal to also to governments and institutions to recognize and support these kind of enterprises, even though it has never been our main focus that, and we're focusing on practicing these kind of rights and building the city and hosting a lot of initiatives within the city. But we're over a year and a half ago, we started having the conversation with many other entities around why don't we create some kind of statute, we call it at that time, some kind of framework that recognizes and describes what we're all doing about. And we're talking about urban gardens, we're talking about squats, we're talking about legalized initiatives that count with leases from municipalities and other institutions. And basically also people who participated on particular levels. But we all recognize this, shared DNA of self-management, of independence, of collective creation of democracy, horizontal democracy in the decisions, etc. It's kind of what we all know, at least in Europe, as the social center tradition, which has taken many different. So we got together and okay, and we started thinking about this. And at the same time, it's been a very interesting situation within the city, because there's been a change in the municipality, which it's a long story, but now it's a municipal platform, which it's a mix of different entities, but it's very, very much permeated by social movements, and who actually won the elections last May. And we have colleagues in these fights who are now part of these institutions. As we started to develop this, and wait a second, because that's my colleague ringing the bell.
Okay, just
La puerta. My flat is open. And so we started to discuss, and we wanted to propose this framework for the municipality, or no matter who to use, to create this kind of protocol or whatever that would allow to protect the initiatives that were already on the city, and also promote the existence of more cities. So kind of we didn't want to fight for one single space. We wanted to globalize the kind of the struggle into something that could be helpful for all kinds of initiatives already existing and others to come. So we created this. This platform aims at other things, like creating a network of mutual help among all these kinds of spaces, discussing strategies together, and doing some advocacy to recognize these spaces, and whatever we need it for. But the thing is that we collected a lot of knowledge and a lot of experiences from many different cities, from many different spaces in Europe, in other places of Spain, and we generated this document, which is our proposal. Meanwhile, we come with a municipality, sharing them the work we've been doing and the discoveries, which was an interesting experience of the municipality kind of opening to listening. The result, it's been not as we expected, because the municipality actually did approve, it picked up what we were proposing, that due to many various factors, like from political games within institutions, to bureaucracies, to lack of political will, to my colleague Anna.
Hola.
She'll join the conversation.
Hola.
And so they use what we produced to come up with their own proposal, which in our view is very, very limited. It's not innovative and doesn't recognize the real value and the potential of the experiences. But right now we're still working on it, and we're still discussing with institutions to actually make this framework evolve into something that is what we expect, that recognizes the power and the DNA of these spaces. That's in 5 minutes kind of what we've been doing. So where we are doing, it's the concept of right to the city has been very much within the center of our discussions, and that's basically what we think these spaces, these kind of spaces, are creating. They're creating spaces to live and to experience that right to the city, to the citizens, their real the power to decide what to do and how to get organized and what to focus their energy. We just want institutions to habilitate the spaces and let us do.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Anna.
Hello, how are you?
After that, we can maybe ask you, because in Madrid there was a quite powerful permaculture movement, the kind of this sitting kitchen with permaculture in the whole city, and now they are working so hard with the city hall in these huertos urbanos.
Mhm.
And I think it's a quite important thing. It's right to the sustainable city. Maybe we can try fast with Costas because he's in the Skype. He can't join. And we say welcome to Claudia from Sao Paulo. Hello, Claudia.
Hello, how are you? The sound is not that good here, so I'm having a bit of trouble to understand you. Are you understanding me?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, we can hear you. Maybe you can join, you can listen through the YouTube streaming. This is the link, and you can turn off the microphone in this. Maybe it's going to work. West Cloud is part of Hortelões Urbanos. That is a kind of citizen network of permaculture with a lot of initiatives in the whole city of São Paulo. So I think is very important for her to be here and for us to listen. So let's go to Costas, to Athens. Neo Guinea, it's a collective working with resilience and with a lot of sustainable things in Athens and in the whole Greece. So Costas, hello, how are you?
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Okay, so explain us what are you doing in Neo Guinea and things happening around this right to the sustainable city, right to the resilient city, could be.
Okay. Yeah, I will give you a brief introduction on what we do with Neo Guinea, and then I will try to connect this with other things that are happening in Athens, projects with which we collaborate or we are friends with. So Neo Guinea started in 2009. It's quite a long time ago, and we created a social center in one of the neighborhoods on the outskirts or near to the center of Athens, with the main idea of developing skills around homesteading. So how can people be self-sufficient and resilient in their everyday lives within an urban environment? So we had this two-story building. We created a rooftop garden where people could visit and learn about gardening in the balcony or in the rooftop in an urban environment. We did and how you can actually create your own.
Hello? I'm not hearing.
Methods for insulating homes in an urban environment. So these were workshops that were run either on a weekly
Sorry,
basis.
Costas, because I stopped my microphone, forgetting that it wasn't going to work. Well, he was speaking about these solar plants and a lot of sustainable energy plans that Neo Guinea is doing for the self-consumption of energy. So go on with this.
Okay, you want me to continue from there, yeah?
Yes, now we can listen, yeah.
Okay. And we also looked into natural building practices for insulating. So generally, these were maybe once a week or every week during the weekends. These workshops to gain these practical skills. Since 3 years now, we have moved on the outskirts of Athens in Nea Makri, where we have a half-an-acre field where we practice permaculture, organic gardening, herbal gardens, and stuff like that. So we are trying to create a rural plus urban space and try to investigate what can happen on the outskirts of a city, yeah, mostly emphasizing on food production. At the same time, we continue with the renewable energy projects on the outskirts of Athens, like installing a few wind turbines, solar panels, and so on. So, I mean, this is a general description of what we do. I can give you a quick overview of things that are going on in Athens, which are partially related with what we do, but also are very close to the topic. So there is a very strong movement around solidarity movement around the immigrants, the refugees that are coming mostly from Syria in the last couple of years. So there is a strong squatting movement around that. There are a lot of people, a lot of groups squatting buildings and hosting the refugee families there. And along with these projects, there are some collective kitchens organized by civil society groups that have already existed for a few years, but now they are actively providing food for these squads, mostly to feed the refugee families. So there is a network of 4 or 5 kitchens in Athens where people give food, and there are people preparing food on a voluntary basis. There are quite a few, like moving away from the refugee issue. There are a lot of occupied parks in Athens where there's a park in Exarchia, for example, that it was going to become a parking lot, and then during the riots of 2008, it was occupied by the neighborhood, by the neighbors, and it was turned into a park. It's a lovely park now with huge trees, and there's a bit of gardening going on there, but mostly it's a green spot where people can relax in the center of Athens. There are other gardening projects there is an occupied territory in one of the big parks in Athens, in the Trici Park, where there is a collective there doing organic farming. And then there is another gardening project in the old airport in Elliniko. And there is a apart from the gardening that they do there, they are also trying to occupy spaces of the old airport, which I think now it has been sold to a private company to make some kind of resort plus a park. But there is so this group there is working around this conflict, whether the whole old airport is going to become a park or part of it. In addition to these, there is like a cooperative, collective business movement that has been growing in the last 5 years. There are a lot of cafes and small tavernas around Athens that are cooperatively run mostly by young people, and there are some shops providing solidarity economy products like coffee from the Zapatistas and so on. So this is also a new thing that's been going on. And yeah, finally, there's like seed sharing networks. There is a national seed sharing network called Veliti that now has a regional part in the city of Athens. So there are 4 or 5 groups working on seed sharing and native varieties of vegetables and so on. And of course, there are quite a few social centers. Some of them are
Can't hear.
and
Not hearing.
so yeah, so this is more or less it. I mean, it's quite a big network, as in all of the other cities that we are talking about, and yeah, we can go into details later on.
Okay, thank you so much, Costas. I think now we go to Beirut with Habib. He was the first one in arriving to the Hangout. So, and after that, we go to Brazil, to Sao Paulo. Okay, welcome, Habib. I would like to ask you around these urban fights in Beirut and this private dealing of the cleaning of the cities. And I remember that Let's Think movement. It was quite visual. A lot of people occupying the street. How is it going in Beirut around these questions?
Well, I think here in Beirut, there has been a fight for right to the city for some few years now, because there's no rights left in the city. I mean, there's no public spaces left in the city. The coast is being privatized. There's very few public access places in the city. Everything is becoming luxury condominiums, foreign money, you know, who knows what kind of funds are buying all of the land, but it's not affordable for any of the people. So the Youth Stink movement was kind of the tail end of a long recent history of grievances against the government, and it was because of the garbage in the city was not being picked up. So the garbage landfill was closed, and the garbage started to pile on the streets, and people started to protest and demonstrate and do all kinds of stunts and try to resist the government. But in the end of the day, we're now 1 year later. The protests have died down, and the garbage is still is happening. The government wants to throw all the garbage in the landfill right off of the coast of the city. It's very dangerous for the environment. The fumes are making people sick. So the protest on that front has kind of, in a way, failed. And you know, so people are still dealing with this garbage. But there are other successes, I think, in public space that we can talk about, and there have been a handful of sites on the Lebanese coast that were the last public beaches that have been a battle to protect them, to stop the developers. We have huge developers from Europe, from the US, big architects, teams doing big projects worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's very hard to stop them. But there have been a few Occupy strategies in some areas. There have been ways to contest these projects by researching the laws and the ways in which these projects bend laws. And there have been lawsuits against the government. And there have been all kinds of ways of rethinking the narrative of these spaces that's being sold to the public as you know, economic empowerment, because these great big towers are going to help the economy. But you know, a lot of people are saying it's not true. These are just for very, very high capital. We're talking about multi-million-dollar apartments. So there has a growing resistance to these developers, and in some cases, in 3 or 4 cases, major projects have been stopped worth hundreds of millions of dollars due to the activism that's been going on. So the garbage protests have probably been the least successful, but the other protests that have come before them and continue are having some success. And what used to be very easy to develop land and destroy land and to steal land from the public, and now it's more difficult because of many activist collectives that are fighting for these cases to contest them, to shame the developers, and so there have been some success stories. And I'm reporting on it for my site, BeirutReports.com, and that's one of the main areas of focus that I've been working on over the past few years.
But you said that the garbage protest was not so successful, but we saw quite impressive protests and visual and a kind of networked movement. How do you think it completes the other protest? I mean, it can be more, have a bigger presence in media, but what we saw was, well, at least a kind of emotional, kind of,
Well,
that's fantastic. I think they do it in the map of the Right to the City fights.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, what was interesting is that they did get a lot of media time. The activists, you know, used the garbage crisis to talk about the broader problem of corruption in the city, which was we lack the most basic public services that you might take for granted. In other cities, we don't have water from the government that comes only 2 hours per day, or electricity comes 6 hours per day. The roads are broken. So there's so much corruption in the public sector that people don't get the basic needs. And garbage collection is one of those things. So it kind of was a way to get people to, you know, to speak out. And one of the, I think that as itself, the Youth Stink movement didn't really achieve any of its goals, which was the resignation of ministers, which was the economically, environmentally sustainable solutions for waste. None of that happened. It's actually becoming a very bad solution right now. But a lot of the people who were involved in the movement went on to other movements, and they also formed a kind of political party called Beirut Madinati, which means Beirut, my city. and this was a political party that ran in the municipal elections of last few months ago. Earlier, I would say toward the few months ago this summer. And there was a municipal election for Beirut, and so this new party ran. A lot of the voices that became prominent during this You Stink movement, they ran for office. Now, they didn't win, but they won in a few districts. So we have a winner-takes-all system in Lebanon. So that they won in 2 or 3 districts was very impressive because we have a very difficult political situation with militia leaders from a civil war and warlords and mafiosos who run the country. So that they were able to win 3 districts was very impressive, but they didn't win anything because of our election law is very old, and so the winner takes all. And so, but they did get about 30% of the vote, which, you know, they were happy with, and they were able to put together a lot of these, you know, narratives about sustainable cities and right to the city and cooperative planning. You know, the government here really just plans and doesn't ask people what they think at all. So, so now there is starting to be a challenge to the public sector project, asking for the public to participate. So all of this kind of discourse of right to the city, of having a right to participate in the planning of the city, and demanding, you know, more transparency. All of this discourse now has become political discourse in the country. So it's a long road, but it's a small step, I think.
Okay, let's go to São Paulo. Well, it's quite interesting how all of this rage of people is going to these municipal platforms. In all the cities we are here now, Madrid, which one the city, out of Madrid, Athens, we have a lot of outskirts and small districts ruled by Syriza or small new platforms. In São Paulo, we had now the Bancada Chivista, that they got 1 representative in the city. We had in the first hangout Belo Horizonte, Brazil. They want 2 representatives in the local elections. So I think this right to the city and municipalist global movement is kind of growing. So let's go to São Paulo. Hello, Claudia. I would like you to share the experience of hortelões urbanos. How is it working as a kind of common space of people doing things and building a new, more sustainable city in São Paulo? It's a huge city. It's a different city from this approach. So let's know what you are doing there.
Okay, hello. I'm very thankful to be in this conversation. Actually, I'm a journalist, and I started to grow food in my home 8 years ago. And I thought I was the only one that had that idea. And sometime later, I found other people doing the same. And we started with another journalist called Tatiana. We started a group on the Facebook called Hortelões Urbanos, which means urban gardeners. And now the group has more than 55,000 people around the country, Brazilians that live abroad, people from other countries, mostly speaking in Spanish. We receive them also. And we are all day long here speaking about how to grow food at home or how to grow food in public spaces. I became a volunteer of the first community garden in São Paulo. The first community garden in a public square. It's called the House Garden, the Horta das Corujas, and it was 4 years ago. And this initiative inspired a lot of other community gardens that are spreading. We still don't have public support or a law that put rules on that. We started as a guerrilla gardeners, but we arrived to receive the sympathy of the population. So we are staying and we are spreading. I also work with water and urban trees. I'm a person, we just have the elections, the city elections here. You spoke about the Bancada Ativista. We are starting to have new people in the political arena. And but we here work much more as a network. Each one in one position, some people inside trying to be inside the governmental machine, and others working outside, because Brazilian society is not yet engaged on environmental issues. It's very difficult for us to put that in the agenda. There is a huge conflict between the long-term interest and the short-term interest, and the short-term is winning. We are destroying our forests to plant, to grow commodities. We are in a process of making this country a desert, and most of the population are not aware of the risks and seeing just the immediate money. So it's very difficult for us, and going to a public square, putting there biodiversity and growing food there is a powerful communication weapon. So even when I am growing food in the square, I'm still a journalist. We do that to make a point.
Okay, I'm going to do two questions, and any of you can answer. The first one is, what we see is a kind of global way of working of city halls and capitalism, that so the public is going to the private. The garbage in the cities is usually a kind of privatized company, public company. In Spain, we are trying to remunicipalize, to take back the city, this garbage system. And so the question could be how the commons and the citizenship, and what people is doing around sustainable city, and the public could together take back the city from private hands. And the second question, it would be, which narrative or storytelling we could create beyond the right to sustainable city. In Spain, we are working the Ciudad de los Cuidados, is the care city, putting the life in the middle. So all around sustainability is more than sustainability. Is life, is people, is solidarity. So I don't know, maybe which narrative could be more important for bringing people together. Okay, so any one of you can want to respond?
I can start.
Okay.
Here in Brazil, we are living a conservative and neoliberal agenda. They won the city elections all over the country. We just sent away our ex-president, which was much left-wing. So we are in the right wing, and it's very complicated at this moment to fight this idea, this hegemonic idea of privatizing is better. So we are acting, some of us are acting against it and going to the streets to protest. It's very important. And others are trying to build bridges to talk to these people and try not to lose everything. I'm more in this second initiative, but I support people that are in the streets. And just now, I was just publishing an article supported by several scientific research showing that urban trees are very important, and trying to start a conversation with the new mayors and the new city councilors about that. And it's a very complicated scenario. I believe we will suffer some years of, unfortunately, some years of step backs, because people are truly believing that privatizing and the conservative agenda will be better for this society.
Anyone else want to answer any of the two questions?
I want to mention a couple of things. Well, first of all, regarding what you mentioned in Madrid, we have to put issues on the scope, and it's not the same as we're talking about the garbage deals, you know, which we cannot pass from this. You know, the municipality of Madrid hasn't been able to find the solution to change huge corporations that have the capabilities with other more sustainable options, because there are none, because we have privatized all this and creating the resources for that, it's limited. So it's going to be a long path. We're going to revert that situations into creating, you know, going more and more into the capital. Second of all, I'm a little disillusioned with certain initiatives on the cities. The cities a lot of times are very good marketers, and we have to, you know, scratch on the surface what's underneath those beautiful slogans and creative advertising campaigns. And so I'm not like, oh, the city of care, well, that's great. What's underneath that? And I say that as I can say so many initiatives that are very nice to fill in conversations that we have to analyze them deep. And then the last part is like, how do we create a more participated city? Where first of all, there are a lot of initiatives already existing, and we have to first to do is care for them and keep them, and how to protect them, because, you know, society is very intelligent into creating and has a lot of initiatives. And the other part is how we do create more permeating institutions. How does the institutions relate with the city? It takes into account what organizations, social movements are doing. At least in Spain, there's no culture of that. There are not institutions that have created the mechanisms to do that. Sometimes, or a lot of times, when they evolve into consultations, they're very superficial. They don't have a deep plan to articulate all that. Obviously, it's a complicated issue. It's a long-term thing. But we have to aim at that. And from opening databases to creating spaces and forums where organized society, which is already doing a lot of stuff, can express the voice and actually be actively heard.
Yes, you confirm what the departure point of these hangouts is that civil society is doing much more things, and there are a lot of initiatives, and the commons oriented experiences are richer than government. So that was the plan of these hangouts, just to put and to make visible a kind of, okay, guys, there are a lot of things happening in all of the cities. So listen more and try to not only recognize, but to help with this social movement and commons oriented. Anyone else want to respond to the question? Costas or Habib?
You're asking about the successful strategies.
What?
Are you? I wasn't hearing the question properly. I'm talking about the successful strategies that have the strategies.
Yes, well, I spoke about storytelling and narratives, but of course it's got to be a kind of bottom-up people and bottom-up narratives and strategies and campaigns from the people, from civil society, to go beyond, to win the fight. I mean, it was not a question about what the marketing could do, but how bottom-up stories and campaigns could reform and go beyond this sustainable city. I think it's okay, but maybe we can find better ones.
I mean, I can talk about, I think one of the most successful cases in Beirut have been activist movements and collectives that use a legal foundation for their work, and they're able to contest municipal projects that are destructive based on a legal basis. And they're able to find laws that call into question the use of property, and to do the research, the legal research needed to find out how laws were manipulated to allow developers to take more land than they should. That's been the most successful case in this country, because we have our former prime minister who owns a huge piece of land on the coast, and this is called the Delie. And this piece of land is the last natural shore of Beirut. Beirut is a city with no more coast. And this piece of shore was occupied by the activists But they also used the laws to discover that the ways in which the property was purchased was illegal or unconstitutional in some ways. And this created a massive legal war, and this added a lot of media credibility to the activists, and the site of property which had been known as private property had suddenly become contested in the media. And now it's 3 years since the project was supposed to begin, and there's nothing happening in the project. And the owner is one of the most powerful men in the country, and he feels almost like he's been stopped by the activists, I think many would say. So even taking on the most powerful figures in the country, if there's a strong legal team involved with the activists, this seems to be a key to success in this country, at least. Even in a country where there are many laws but no enforcement of laws, you can still build a strong legal case that the public will listen to.
Okay, we're working in a common path called titanpath.com Sustainable City. I'm going to tweet it in the Right to City hashtag. I would like you to put all these practices and experiences of you're speaking about, the link of the movement of the experience for doing a kind of open process for more people and to know and to ensure these practices. Anyone can do Costas. I do like. I would like to you to speak because the thing is, Athens and Greece in this moment is more or less in a quite difficult situation. There are so many things happening. I mean, it's not speaking about it. You spoke about several experiences of Athens, but I know you have this free energy, peer-to-peer energy, sustainable exchange of people in several parts of Greece. What's happening in Greece that media is not speaking about civil society and the commons?
Okay, maybe connected a little bit to the previous question as well about the narratives and the storytelling. It's quite interesting what has happened in Greece with Syriza, which was the first left-wing government to take power ever, actually, in Greece. And I mean, the grassroots social movements that are fighting, for example, for public spaces and against privatization, against real estate, and more or less liberal agenda that all of us are trying to, that we are all working with. I mean, the grassroots movement, they had their processes, and they to reach the people of the neighborhood and try to create some kind of strong social base. But a lot of people who were part of Syriza as a political party were involved in processes like this. And I would say that the mainstream story while Syriza was coming to power about 2 years ago was that a lot of people had a lot of hope about all these social struggles now having a very strong support from a government, and so on. But I mean, this didn't end up happening, and also, there is this whole story with the debt and the Troika and the IMF and the European Union and this whole economic situation. And so it's interesting to see that a big part of the social movement, which was part of Syriza, right now is going through some kind of depression. A lot of struggles are not as strong as they used to be. So it feels like people have to build this momentum again. And actually, there is no support from Syriza, the left-wing government. And actually, there is a huge, massive wave of privatization of big state property that is being sold as part of the memorandums and so on. So, for example, there is the case of the old airport in Athens that I was talking about before, and the grassroots initiative that is fighting for this space to become a park and not a real estate project. And actually, Syriza signed in September the agreement for this park to actually become a real estate project by some Greek ship owner, some Chinese company, and I don't know, some like some construction company from Saudi Arabia or somewhere. I'm not sure. So it's quite difficult to make sure that the vision and the storytelling will actually bear fruit, because a lot of people can, because it's quite easy to go down routes for the social movements where they might be a dead end, as the case of Syriza ended up being. And it's interesting to see what will happen in Spain and so on, but are like truly.
Okay, thank you so much. I think, well, a final round. I'm waiting for. I'm so sad because the Gezi Park movement and Istanbul was going to participate. I think it's quite important what's happening in Turkey in the last years. I think it's quite of a networked movement working around commons and the city. And unfortunately, now they have a quite difficult situation. But well, let's wait 5 more minutes. I want you to say goodbye. The kind of we are now at the same time doing this hangout, and all of the states are in Quito, in Ecuador, in this habitat of the United Nations. So there are states speaking about cities, kind of nonsense without the people mainly. So what would you say to the United Nations? How would you put them against the wall? It kind of, okay, we people are doing things, and you, the state, are not a planet. So awake. So I think it would be nice to say hello to Habitat 3 and to say goodbye to all of these people. Thank you so much for this participation. Now we begin this last round conversation. That's the UN is ringing for us. Okay. Who wants to say goodbye first?
I can say goodbye. I'd like to leave a message. I believe our problems will be much better solved in decentralized way, empowering people. I believe that permaculture is a beautiful path for us to achieve sustainability and social justice. So let's build this worldwide network of people empowered and in the same mood of rebuild the society with our hands. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
Okay. I would tell the people in Habitat that, okay, I understand they have understood that society will always go ahead from institutions. So that's a good first step. I would tell them that that the first step is to retire the barriers that institutions are already imposing to these initiatives that are growing. So a good step would be to remove barriers, and then we can think about building and promoting. But just by removing barriers and changing that mentality of that can't be done because it collides with, or if you think it through, if you're a little innovative, you'll find a way, and civil society is finding the ways to do it. So why not?
Okay, thank you so much. Gracias.
Bye.
Habib?
I would just say that here we're desperately sinking in garbage here in Beirut. Garbage is a big priority. We have to recycle. We have to figure out sustainable ways of dealing with this problem, imposing recycling maybe on a certain level. We need to have a new narrative for what is meant by progress. Neoliberal progress, building towers and real estate projects is not helping societies. We need to work on development that actually addresses people's needs. People who live in the countries, the local people have to be consulted. They have to be spoken to. They have to be discussed with them what kind of projects they need for their cities, and not coming from the states and the governments and the private corporations that are in bed with them. We need to have the people on the ground being consulted, and we need them to be participating, not just in their city, but also in the politics. And unfortunately, that's not happening right now, but we need a new narrative that says that is a vision of progress and not just foreign capital.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, you, Costas, any message to the United Nations from Athens?
Yeah, I would say to all these people to wake up and realize that the game is over, that this thing has to end, and it's not just them that have to wake up, and it's everybody else as well, and realize that our problems are our problems, and we have to provide solutions for them, not wait for others. So let's do it.
Okay, thank you so much. This has been the Right to Sustainable City Hangout, part of the Create the City of United Cities and Local Governments. I think it's happening during the Habitat 3 in Quito. I say too that, wake up people. And if not, I think it could be kind of occupy everything, occupy UN. The game is almost over, but I think there's kind of hope. And it's the commons and it's civil society who is doing the most important things. The right to the city is more a practice than a kind of academic stuff of people thinking about right to the city during 40 years. So by UN, I think it's a nice idea. So thank you so much. See you around, and let's go. Bye. Let's go occupying things.
Bye.
See you. Bye.
Occupy UN. Good.
Thank you. Bye.